I'm here in Sandwich to talk to you about the history of the sandwich and how it shows our most powerful weapon in defeating inequality. So I don't know if you know who invented the sandwich. Oh, the Earl of Sandwich. Not Steve, the bricklayer of Sandwich. No, it's always an Earl, because history isn't about who actually did things. It's about who gets to put their name on them. So the story goes, in 1762, John Montagu, the fourth Earl of Sandwich, yeah, the fourth. There had already been 3 Earls of Sandwiches before, and not one of them had thought, bread, meat, bread. No, the fourth was a genius, right? But in 1762, he was at the gambling table, right? And he didn't want to leave his cards, because he loved the gambling. So he asked for meat between 2 slices of bread, and his friend said, I'll have the same as sandwich. Bang, history. But you know what's funny? People had been eating bread with stuff inside of it forever. Hillel the Elder, 1st century BC, lamb and herbs between matzah. Medieval peasants would eat meat on trenches, basically edible plates. Flatbreads with fillings all over the world. Shawarma, chapati, wraps, tacos. So the Earl didn't invent the sandwich, but what he did do is he branded it. He owned the story, and that's the point. The truth isn't what actually happened. The thing that really matters is the story, what people believe, and that's way more important than the little old truth. The Earl had power, prestige and profile, and once you have that, once you own the story, you can change behaviour, you can change nations. Because names have power. You put an idea in people's minds. I mean, a sandwich library. Nobody's thinking that is a library in Sandwich, are they? If you see the phrase sandwich library, your head goes, oh, what, we have to rent sandwiches? Like, I've got to take out a sandwich? Like, is there, how do we, I don't understand. Like, what, I mean, you've got a card, a membership card. Yeah, I'm renting an egg cress sandwich this week. I'm just going to try that. What if you want a sandwich on a Wednesday? For example, it's closed on a Wednesday. How would you even get a sandwich on a Sunday or a Wednesday? Well, you can't have a sandwich on a Sunday, obviously, because the sandwich library isn't open. And I can't afford my own sandwich, so I have to rent. If you get to name what a sandwich is, you get to choose what people think when they hear that word. Everything in this town means something else other than its actual name. For example, I mean, what is a sandwich Magna Carta? So what they did, I guess, is they took a survey of all the sandwiches in the land at a certain time, and everybody had to say how many sandwiches there were. I don't know about you, I've had days where I'm like, how many sandwiches are in the house? Because I'm feeling there's too many sandwiches in this house, and I want to do something about it. St. Peter's Church sandwich. A church sandwich, and that is a big sandwich, you're right, because you can see how big it is because it says the heritage organ stood in St. Peter's Sandwich from 1996 to 2016. I don't even understand what, I mean, I've had some good sandwiches, but I've never wanted to kill a man over it. You know, at that time, British cuisine was very poor, and I can only presume that the French and their buttery sandwiches were worth invading for. But look at that, look how seriously they took. There was a whole, they got the Navy involved. I mean, I'm not going to tell you who won in the Battle of the Sandwich, but one team cut the mustard. You've heard of passenger accessibility ramps. Well, this is a passenger accessibility sandwich. Yeah, peace monument for Sandwich, because sandwiches are quite, you know, they do lead to battles. We've established that already. Mouldy. I can only think mouldy. And I'm not sure I need to know what that is. And this is the thing about the significance of a name. It matters. Naming the story is power. Take GDP. Take gross domestic product. Gross domestic product. What does it mean? It sounds scientific, right? A clean measure of progress. But it's been debunked for decades. Like, even Simon Kuznets, the guy who helped design GDP in the 1930s, warned against using it to measure welfare because it ignores inequality, it ignores environmental destruction, it ignores unpaid work. A divorce is great for GDP. GDP counts a war as growth. Build a bomb, GDP goes up. Clean up the bomb, GDP goes up. Like, it's literally the only measure of human progress that does not care whether you're alive at the end. But politicians and newspapers keep worshipping at the altar of GDP because it's a story that has always been. GDP goes up, yay! GDP goes down, boo! And it's always been the measure of economic growth. It's the story, so people believe the story. Or take neoliberalism, the grand story of the last 40 years. Free markets, deregulation, privatisation. Well, even the IMF, the International Monetary Fund, the temple of economics, published papers showing that neoliberal policies have increased inequality and slowed growth around the Western world. And it's the same psychology with the sandwich. The Earl loved the story that made his laziness look like innovation. Our elites love the story that makes the status quo look like the only way and the right way. No, they're not the wealth hoarders that own all the factories and land and assets so you have to work for them. No. They're the job creators. They create the jobs. So you've got they're not people that own everything that you need to survive and then charge you access to that. No. They're the job creators. They didn't pull the ladder up so you couldn't climb. They created a ladder opportunity for you. You're welcome. It's like somebody came round and ate all the food in your fridge and left a Deliveroo referral code on the kitchen table. Went, lucky day, man, 20% off Deliveroo. And don't have to thank me, just eat whatever this is. I mean, the finest coffee and sandwich. Everyone loves a coffee sandwich, right? Well, it's a bit soggy, but yeah, you know, whatever you got the idea for. So we all call it sandwich because an aristocrat got naming rights. Just like we call millionaires job creators just because they get to call it that themselves. Everything, though, can have a different name. We can name it differently. For example, I don't call a coffee table a coffee table. No. I call them shin destroyers because that's what they are. I don't call a fitted sheet a fitted sheet. I call it a weekend ruiner. And I don't call a smoke alarm a smoke alarm. No, I call them 3 a.m. heart attack machines because that's what they are. Now, the power of being able to name your own legacy is also so important because John Montagu, the fourth Earl of Sandwich, in his day was actually known for something else, right? What was he known for? Betraying close friends for his own political gain, right? So when his close friend, John Wilkes, became politically inconvenient for the Earl of Sandwich, he had Wilkes's private poem that he sent to him read aloud in the House of Lords, which led to Wilkes, his friend's expulsion from Parliament and conviction for obscenity and libel. So perhaps we should actually take the word sandwich back as well. Perhaps the real thing named after the fourth Earl of Sandwich should be pulling a sandwich, which is essentially stabbing a mate in the back for your own personal gain. Yeah, do you speak to Barry anymore? No, he absolutely pulled a sandwich on me. That twat can die in a ditch. In economics, we need a new story because unlike the 18th century, the 17th century, the modern world allows us to hear everyone's story, everyone's voice, not just the landed earl's voice. And in this world, extreme wealth hoarding isn't clever or heroic, it's inefficient, destabilizing and immoral. Because there are limited resources, but nobody needs to starve. There's enough food, there's enough shelter, there's enough energy to meet everybody's needs without anybody having to work 2 jobs a week and scrimp and save. You can't have the money in a huge pile when it's needed somewhere else. And we don't need to struggle as much as we are. Billionaires shouldn't be seen as captains of industry or job creators. They should be seen for what they are: wealth hoarders, human black holes, asset dragons, people who sit on piles of gold so big that they warp the economy around them while everyone else starves. And once you see them like that, the question isn't how can we find another way of celebrating their contribution to the economy? No. Or, you know what, we should consult them on the effect of wealth taxes. No. It's how can we stop letting them write the story? Like, for example, by not politely asking them to share, because they're not going to suddenly wake up and go, you know what, I could do with 2 rather than 4 billion. I've got enough stuff. I'm going to stop being an asset dragon. So how do we do it? Great. And we stop it by 1, telling different stories. If newspapers say billionaire genius builds rocket to put William Shatner in space, we need to say, no, billionaire has massive midlife crisis and builds rocket in the hope of regaining lost erections. Language is power. If we have and change the words, we change the way people see the world and see each other and see the actions of these absolute plonkers. 2, reclaim the metrics. Stop worshipping GDP growth like it's the only measure of success. Let's start talking about child poverty, life expectancy, well-being, those indexes, because those are the human indexes. Growth is not positive just in itself. 3, collective voice. The internet means that we're no longer stuck just with the Earl's versions of events. Thank God for that gong. Millions of people can chip in, fact check, meme, mock, share. We're in this together. It's about collective change. And 4, policy, not charity. We stop letting the rich, stop letting the millionaires and billionaires setting the terms by taxing them properly, closing loopholes, regulating things properly, and refuse to let the philanthropy or the idea of philanthropy replace actual proper taxation. We tell the new story together. The old story says the Earl invented the sandwich. Billionaires, millionaires, the rich invent prosperity. The new story says people have always invented prosperity. Billionaires, millionaires, just slap their name on it. And that's why the fight isn't just about tax or wages, it's about who controls the narrative. The Earl didn't invent the sandwich, but he invented something much more powerful. The idea that he invented the sandwich. Because whoever names the sandwich owns the table. Now, I'm going to leave you as I munch into this delicious Havel the Elder.